But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such idiots in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with money.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such idiots in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with money.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
be at it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 284. HBR examines a flood of galloping gishes tonight. That's not our actual title because I think I changed it between when I wrote that and when I actually published. So our title is a herd of of ugly wild gishes galloping free across the webs. And maybe a few people will recognize that that reference, what I'm parodying there. But yeah. Anyway, tonight we're diving into a pool of toxicity. So I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson. And we're putting on our hip waders just for you. But as always, we before we do that, we got to do what we got to do.
And you better watch out because I didn't wash mine from the last time. Okay, so they're pretty full.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're caked. They're totally caked.
Yes.
And we all know cake is rape. And then if you were an early adopter of watching HBR, you know what I'm talking about.
I could have sworn the cake was a lie. Is the cake not a lie?
Oh my gosh.
If the cake is rape, then rape is a lie. I'm disillusioned by all of it.
All of it, yeah. No, years ago we encountered a it was a walking simulator game intended to convince the player that all heterosexual interactions lead to rape. All roads lead to rape. And at first, as we're going through this thing and looking at it, everybody's like, "This is a rape simulator. This is a rape simulator." And I'm looking at it and I'm going, none of what it's portraying though is rape. Like every step, the girl makes a choice, whether to go on or not. She just doesn't communicate her feelings and thoughts and interests in the interaction. It would have been like clear back in 2013 or 2014, and so I got really frustrated with it, and I made a video, and I had assistance with this video. It's on my channel, it's way back when. And I can't remember what I titled it, but the reference is cake, and it looks like an old school video game. And it was essentially a video of an individual being fed cake by an apparent boyfriend, and she keeps thinking that she doesn't want the cake, and she keeps being horrified about the cake and not being able to stop eating the cake, but she never says anything to the partner, about, "I don't want any more cake, please stop feeding me." And so I think
Cake-triarchy.
Yes.
I feel if you search for cake-triarchy on Hannah's channel.
Cakeyarchy. And the creator of the walking simulator responded. So we actually got their attention. But anyway, Yeah, so we're gonna do what we got to do before we get into showtime, though. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. And by the way, they can be male or female, as Michael Flood has proved. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justtip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And before we actually dive into Flood's work, and we might actually need toxic waste suits for this. I want to point out there's a connection here. He's not just some guy who's a male feminist that wrote some stuff, right? He is a student of Raewyn Connell, the man who the man at the time who, while going through gender dysphoria and viewing masculinity as a prison and a trap, wrote his narratives about toxic masculinity that became fundamental to feminism's discussions on masculinities. And so he's sort of the architect. Connell is the architect of the entire anti-male demonizing toxic masculinity narrative that is now standard fare in American psychology and in business psychology, in treatment for men's mental health, and so on, in education, everywhere. So this is the next sort of generation, the extension of his work through this other male feminist. So before getting into that, I want to make sure people understand, like, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of male feminists out there that I encounter on Twitter and other social media every day, and most of them are just assholes that say stupid shit and use feminism as an excuse to browbeat other men. But this guy has made a career of it, and he is influential in the movement, in the women's movement. So,
to put it in some kind of context,
by journalists.
You know how the Marvel Cinematic Universe was popular for 3 iterations, and then on the 4th iteration, everyone lost control of what the fuck was going on. It's much the same with feminism. After the 3rd, we're now on the 4th wave. The 3rd wave was very popular, and now we're on the 4th wave, and nobody knows where the hell it's going. But we know we still have to keep paying for it to the tune of billions. So
Yep.
you best keep paying for it, or you're some kind of insert slur here. And that's what Michael Flood is. He's riding on the coattails of wankers who were wrong about everything. So yeah, do proceed, please.
Well, and I would also point out, like, when MRAs go to legislators and say Law X is discriminatory and it needs changed, and legislators start looking into it and feminists start counter-lobbying against us, they cite Michael Flood.
Oh my God.
They cite his work. And, they cite Raewyn Connell. They cite her work. And, these are the people that, we have to deal with what they've said. Because what they've said, whether it's true or not, whether it's valid or not, whether it's reasonable and rational or not, influences and informs law, policy, social standards. When you start talking, about men's issues on social media, pushing on that Overton window, the people pushing back against you cite Michael Flood. When Tekla, for instance, on that we've talked about before on Twitter, who she literally spends all day. Like, I see posts that she's tagged herself into in my feed where she wasn't part of the conversation, and then suddenly she is, all day. She spends all day looking for things that honey badgers have posted and our associates have posted to get into those conversations. When she does that, and she argues against things we've said, she cites Michael Flood. Right? And when Takedown MRAs calls our venues and says these people are dangerous, he cites Michael Flood. So this isn't just some little piddly nobody. This guy is influential, and his mentor was influential. So this is, I want people to understand, we're not just going to start, like, every male feminist I run into is going to become a show. There has to be something more than that, because there's too many of them. So, yeah, this is the guy.
It's pretty interesting, for as much as how feminists hate white men, they love to prop this one up for some reason.
Well, they rely on this one for a lot of things. Like they rely on him for a level of power and I guess a little level of apparent credibility, because he has an academic career. He has made an academic career out of this.
Yeah, don't fight me, fight this straight white guy.
Basically,
that's the history of feminism in a nutshell.
Well, it's like that feminist professor in the middle of a protest, when somebody came along and asked her a pertinent question that she couldn't answer, she responded with, "Hey, we need some muscle over here," and basically to get that guy out of that area, because he was interrupting the protest. His counter protest was interrupting the protest. So that's how feminists work. They need their muscle. Feminist men are the muscle, and a lot of times, feminist men are. I put them in three categories. There are guys who get feminism pushed on them when they're growing up, and they become feminists because they are browbeaten into it, they're snowed into it, or conned. And a lot of times when they start learning the truth, it disillusions them, they feel disenfranchised, and then eventually they abandon it because it's stupid. So that's the first category. Those are the most innocent. And then you get feminists who are male feminists because they can use the rules and the credibility of feminism as a tool of abuse, mainly against other men. Like, if a woman gets in the way of them abusing other men with it, they'll abuse her too, but their target is other men. And then you get guys like this who are exploiting it for dollars. And they make it their profession, use it for power, prestige, and money, just like female feminists do. They're scam artists, in my opinion. Like, my nickname for him is Michael Fraud. That's my opinion, is he's in that camp. Now the men in that camp will still browbeat other men, and they will browbeat women, because they are not they're not any better than the people who adopt feminism because it gives them an excuse to abuse other people. And there are women who will do the same thing, right? There's a fourth camp with women, and to a degree that camp has some men in it too, and that is feminism excuses wallowing in their brokenness. Something is wrong with them, but feminism makes it somebody else's fault and tells them that they don't have to try to get any better. But I think the majority of male feminists are probably in the first camp, and that's why most of the male feminists that you run into are under 30, and as you get to the over 30 age group, you find fewer and fewer, and the ones that you do meet that are over 30 seem to be bigger assholes.
Mm.
So there we go. So the first article that we're going to look at, because this is actually a whole bunch of articles. If I click the menu here, I don't know if it'll show. Yeah, you have articles, authors, topics, blogs, links. He's got a whole bunch of different things. So this is technically one article with a bunch of different sections. This is Fact-Checking MRAs, Bogus Statistics and Factoids. And he published this in 2020. So it's not new, but I'm tired of having it shoved in our faces. So here we go. I will start with the opening paragraph here, where he says, there are various claims made by men's rights activists that have no basis in truth. They are, quote, factoids, items of unreliable or false information that are reported and repeated so often that they become accepted as fact. So I'll tell you the first thing. That's not what a factoid is. A factoid is, did you guys know that an elephant has a 5-foot penis?
Yeah.
That's a factoid, right? It tells a bit of information about. It doesn't tell the whole story. But that's a factoid, right? If you want to get into facts about elephants, you learn more about that. You discover that that's average length and blah blah blah. They have muscle control over it, and they have a 4-year gestation period for their babies, and all that kind of stuff, or some such. But the factoid is this little blurb: elephants have a 5-foot penis. Well, obviously just the males.
It's an actually factual statement.
Mm-hmm. It is true.
It's not false information. It's not, oh my goodness. God, this guy is so disingenuous. It's disgusting.
Yeah, the one time I spent money on Cosmo because my friends were all like, "This, you gotta read this. You gotta read this." And that was one of the things I learned from Cosmo. Like, why is this important in my life? How am I gonna put this to use when I'm out doing my job? At that time, I was working as a sports photographer. Nobody even uses elephants as their mascot, which they should, because elephants are fucking awesome. But yeah.
It's always the horses. Nobody ever talks about how long the average horse dong is.
Yeah. Well, unless they're talking about Catherine the Great.
Yeah.
which there we go. So woozles are items of unreliable or false information that are reported and repeated so often that they have become accepted as fact. That's a woozle. The if I remember right, I've seen the Catherine the Great died for horse dick thing debunked. So anyway, so there we go. He's already off and running in the first paragraph. He doesn't know what he's talking about. On this page, we will fact check some of the inaccurate claims routinely made by MRAs. Additions and revisions are welcome. So he's asking for people to contact him and criticize his work, just so you know.
Okay.
And the web address for this is on xyonline.net, but you can also find it if you go to his Twitter profile and click in his profile on the link to it. That'll take you to this blog as well. So if you would like to give him what he has requested here, what he has welcomed here, offer some criticism. Just remember 2 things. 1, be polite. And 2, be concise and not repetitive, not, this is a gish gallop. Don't gish gallop at him. Just go point. You can go point by point and address things, and that's fine. But most importantly, be polite. We don't advocate what feminists like to call harassment, even if they're not polite with us. And I even if I don't take my own advice, because you guys have seen me on Twitter, I'm not polite.
Oh no, me neither.
Yeah.
I'm like the abridged version of Hannah being impolite.
Yeah, don't call him Cupcake either, because he's not a girl. This page covers the issues listed below. See other sections of XY for assessment of men's rights advocates' claims about the impact of feminist identities and beliefs among women, false accusations, which he hasn't linked. 2022 right up here, and 2013 right up here. Fathers and fatherlessness, domestic violence, men's health, war, and militarism, and so-called feminist quotes by leading feminists, and so on. So here we go. He has a list. The first thing is the media as man-hating, women's control of personal health, paternity fraud, women and men's homicides against children, women and men's homicides against intimate partners, women and children first, perpetuation of child sexual abuse, domestic violence and suicide, trafficking, men victimized by domestic violence, 33% more often than women, says 15-country study. Aaron Pitsey. He just has one section labeled Aaron Pitsey. And also, I know.
It's all false. It's just Aaron. She's not. That motherfucker is not real.
Should we tell her that the next time we see her?
I know. Look at this little factoid, Aaron Pitsey. She's not a real person. She never existed. And then just keep talking about it. It's like a whole thing. Like, is he studying like her entire life? It's just Aaron Pitsey.
Yes.
Is wrong.
Guys, we're going to see the myth of Aaron Pitsey addressed by this professional feminist. Oh my gosh. Men's rights and MRAs, men's rights activists, academic critiques, men's rights and MRAs, accessible critiques. So in other words, in case you're not smart enough to understand the academic critiques written by a professor, the accessible ones are for you. So those must be written for the feminist students. I'll give
them a little bit of credit here.
Yeah.
And say that maybe the academic critiques are behind a paywall.
Yeah, that's possible. And the other possibility is that he does know his audience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not saying feminists, are not all that bright, but maybe feminists are not all that bright. The alt-right, men's anti-feminist advocacy and masculinity and XY collection. So we have our shit carved out for us here, right? This is going to be an ongoing thing. This is not going to get done tonight, all done tonight. We're going to go for, maybe an hour, and then we'll put a tack in it and say, this is where we were, this is where we stopped, and we'll continue this in between other shows. We may do this several shows in a row if I don't have another more urgent topic come up in the meantime. But if we do, we're going to keep coming back to this, because this guy has been a very prolific commentator. So to start, the media as man-hating. Fact! I have to say it that way. Fact! Media content continues to show patterns of male dominance and sexist stereotyping. And much of media control and ownership is in the hands of men.
I'm sorry. This asshole. How are you saying this is a fact? That's not a fact. Okay? The patterns of male dominance and sexist stereotyping, that's objective. That's not a fact.
Yeah, that's a claim.
Right. Right. Media control and ownership, that's a subjective thing. You can actually look at that. I'm sorry. Did I say that wrong? Anyway, you can actually look at who owns what in the media and say, okay, well, this percentage is owned by men and this percentage is not. that would be a fact. Michael, doctor, you're not even, I hate calling him a doctor. Just piece of shit asshole.
And
But
what's interesting is he doesn't have a citation for this.
No, of course
he's
not.
just stating it as a fact. So I would have to
Exactly.
see, you show some evidence, an actual study that shows that the media shows patterns of male dominance. Because now, there are two kinds of ways where something can be majority male. One is it's not an area of interest that women dedicate themselves to as much as men dedicate themselves to, right? The other is men keep women out. Those would be two patterns that feminists would call male dominance, right? The former is very rare. The latter is a lot more common in things that feminists say are male dominated, like sewer work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Women in the media there's been women in the media for longer than Flood has been alive, longer than I have been alive, well before, like, I studied female photojournalists when I was growing up that were old when my dad got involved in journalism. And in fact, activist journalism, to a degree, was invented by a female photojournalist in the early 20th century who went around and God, why can't I think of her name now? Because I just had it a second ago. God, that's embarrassing. But she went around and photographed people in adverse economic circumstances to show the country how they were living and what was going on with them. And she's not the only one. I'm not even going to try to go with a list of names, but the woman who got conditions changed in women's prisons used journalism. The women who got the idea of women's suffrage into mainstream discussion used journalism. There were women working as journalists at that time. And before journalism was publication of newspapers, where it was actually people publishing their journals, there were plenty of women that did that as well. So this idea that this is something that women were ever kept out of is bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's if women wanted to do it, they could do it.
Right. And, there's something else that needs to be talked about is the first two words, media content. Well, what does that entail, right? I think that includes advertisements, such as the sexist ones that we've seen that, have like Gillette, the Gillette ad. Okay. How tell me what man produced that fucking commercial and how well it did for Gillette. Media content is really, it comes down to like the bite-sized bits of video that you can find on things like TikTok. This is how rapidly the generations are progressing. They don't have the attention span to sit there and listen to an hour-long podcast, 2-hour-long podcast talking about gender normativity and things like that. You know what I mean? A lot of them just don't care. So the media content, there's a lot of content out there that's being consumed by people that is completely sexist stereotyping towards men.
Yeah, the other thing I want to know is what is he referring to when he talks about media? Because when we talk about media, there's journalistic media, right? Mm-hmm. There's news media. Right. There is entertainment media, right? There's academic media. Right? Media is just any kind of communication, mass communication to the public that uses writing, sound, visual aids, art, video, imagery. Right? That's all media, and
Yeah.
So it becomes a question when you make a Gish Gallop statement like this, where you're claiming that it's male dominated. It becomes a question. What media is he talking about, and how can he prove it shows patterns of male dominance and sexist stereotyping?
There was never an equivalent of ESG, and I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory, that dreaded acronym. Sorry, it's not an acronym. It's an initialism. ESG, the idea of governments from the top down. Financially incentivizing all the advertising companies and all these media companies to exact I'm just going to call it You all know what I mean. Diversity, it's
inclusion and equity.
Inclusion and equity. And these things are being enacted as though there ever was an equivalent. There never was. There was never any governmental or economical incentives for having adverts in mostly white countries, including mostly white people, or ever having some kind of functional relationship between female characters and male characters. But we're now at this point where it's not just a conspiracy theory what the ESG is happening. It happens from the government down to the private companies that have any obligation whatsoever to comply with the government, which is most of the things that you see in broadcast media, and that's what we mean by media. Well, different people mean different things by media. When Michael Flood talks about the media, he's talking about the space lepers on the internet like us. And when we talk about the media, we're talking about the shit that's actually being broadcast from big fucking towers in every county, in every state, in every country, all over the world. And yeah, it all comes down to the wordplay. And media is one of the most fuck-upable words in the English language.
Yeah. I will point out, Honey Badger Radio is woman-owned.
Yeah.
Just real briefly.
It doesn't matter though. I mean,
no, but with Michael,
women have special privileges until the moment they express any give a shit ability about men.
Yep. And this feminist man wants us to shut up.
Yeah, and then they're even worse than men. If there's anything worse than men, it's anyone whatsoever who speaks out on behalf of men, and that includes women.
Oh yeah.
Includes, but not is limited to women. You know.
Oh yeah, we're totally evil, like kitten eating MRAs. Cue the sound of Lauren's cat. Meow. Oh, you guys don't understand. That happened one night. I had an alarm set for something by accident, and I have a cat meow sound effect on my phone, and it went off right in the middle of me saying something, referencing, I think something that my dad said about racism, where he compared being raised to be racist to being forced as a child to drown a kitten every morning. And it's what kind of person would you become, right? If your parents had you do that first thing in the morning, every morning before you did anything else, what kind of person would you become? And I look at that, and I look at the way that people who are sexist against men and people who are racist against white people, and I'm sure that people who are raised to be racist against every other race are the same way. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's genuinely sexist against women. Feminists like to call accountability sexist, but it's not. But you would become a horrible person, right? But right when I'm talking about that stupid alarm went off. Meow.
You can be taught to murder chickens on a regular basis. You can
Yeah.
be taught to murder cows and pigs and sheep on a regular basis. And I guess it does become more difficult when it comes to dogs and cats because they do seem to be a bit more sentient, probably due to being omnivorous and carnivorous. So they have a few more neurological connections in their brain, and they seem a bit more sentient. And that's why it seems to us like being cruel to cats and dogs is a step worse than being cruel to sheep and cows and pigs.
Well,
pigs.
Cats in particular have cute little baby faces, and it's one of those things. Like for him, it was the reference. He went on to say, you know, what kind of person would be able to look at a little kid and call them a racial slur. You know, you'd have to have, if you were raised to do that, and see the disappointment and pain on their face and not care, you know, or take pleasure from it. You would have to have been altered in a way that is damaging. It's psychologically damaging. And that's, he always talked about that on MLK Day, right? Like, we hear about him freeing society from civil rights violations against black people, but he also freed a lot of white people from really destructive ways of thinking. So this is the whole point.
Yeah, the point is, it's not abnormal to see different species as lower than your own.
Right.
I mean, it's not destructive. I mean, it's kind of necessary as part of a food chain, which you can't get around the idea of a food chain. So it's normal to see other species as a little bit lesser than yourself. In some way or another, but seeing other members of your own species as lesser than yourself is a path to destruction. Mm-hmm. Like no other species would put up with that. Humans are the only ones who have experimented with putting up with that, and it's not going well.
And being raised in a practice of cruelty for the sake of cruelty would make you a very sick person as you got older, right? So that's basically where he was going with that lesson. But when I talked about it that day, it was kind of derailed by my stupid phone going off in the middle of it. I'm like, right at the moment, oh, drowning little baby kitten. And my phone says, meow. And everybody's like, oh my God, she's doing it right now. I'm thinking, no, we're not.
Meow, glug, 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 glug.
No. But although when you give a cat a bath, they will act like you are drowning them.
Oh yeah. When I was young, we had a cat, and sorry, this is Lauren's story time. This is back in the day when we had like a huge oil tank to heat the house, and so one night the cat decided he was going to go down in the basement and get stuck underneath it.
Oh.
And yeah, I don't know what happened if the oil spilled. Somehow the cat just got covered in fucking oil. So my mom had to take the cat and bathe it, right? You can't let the cat just live with this fucking oil all over.
They can't lick it off. It's
that'd be really bad.
Yeah. So she's got the cat in the bathtub, and she's just trying to hold him down and bathe him, and the cat was just not having any of it. And he sliced her from her wrist almost halfway down to her elbow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the way feminists react to anti-feminist information.
Exactly.
Like a cat takes to water.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, he has this thing. Fact, media content continues to show patterns of male dominance and sexist stereotyping. Like the Oprah Winfrey show.
Yeah.
Wait, no, not Oprah. Oprah's an angel, right?
View? The View?
Oh yeah, The View. That male dominated The View. Totally. No, it's bullshit. If women want to do this, they can do this. We can do this. We're doing it. We didn't ask anybody's permission, right? We just did it. And I didn't have to go through a gauntlet of men judging me for being female when I was 15 years old and wanted to be a sports photographer. Like, I just went in and showed my work to the editor and my references and got the job because I was good at what I was doing. A lot of news media actually is dominated by female personalities. A lot of big news anchors are female. You look at movies and television. A lot of the most popular personalities, the most sought after, the ones that sell the most magazines, the ones that get the most interviews, women, and it's not something new. You look at actresses like Goldie Hawn. I mean, Goldie Hawn made a career, you could say, out of making fun of the blonde bimbo stereotype, right? And feminists would be like, no, she perpetuated it. No. She was over the top for a reason, right? And so, yeah, she was making fun of the blonde bimbo stereotype for a great deal of her career. But that's not the only thing she did. She has been a writer, a screenwriter. She has been a director. She has been a producer. I've had a lot of women who complain about women being underrepresented don't know her career. Like, she's a brilliant woman. And she didn't go along and say, well, I need permission from a lot of men to do this. I don't know if it's okay for me to try this because I'm female. She just did it.
Right.
And what's more,
she was going to do.
She made as much money as she needed to make to live the rest of her life. And then she fucked off.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Even the people who are good at their jobs, even the people who I like, I absolutely respect for just making as much money as they need and then fucking off. I wish more Hollywood people would do that.
Yeah. Yep. And so the idea that being female holds women back from this, is bullshit, right? And of course, the idea of stereotyping is itself an oversimplification. There's a lot of what you see in Hollywood exists to poke fun at stereotypes. A lot of it exists to entertain people, but it doesn't necessarily promote the idea that you have to live that way. And I'll give you a really good example. When I was growing up, part of my parents' push, their anti-drug push, was to watch Cheech and Chong with us. Right? And those movies were hilarious. Right?
Yes,
their comedy was hilarious. Their the routines they did on the old 33 long play records, right? The 33 speed long play records. Earache My Eye was hilarious. All of that was hilarious. But do you want to be the one that everybody's laughing at? Because they looked ridiculous. That was their whole thing. Yeah, these guys are hilarious, but the characters they're portraying are stupid as hell. Is that what you want? You want to be the stupid as hell person that everybody laughs at? It's fun to laugh at stoner movies. It's fun to watch stoner movies. But if you're imitating the stoners, there's something wrong. And that's fine. That's a great way for parents to use that stereotype. Well, I know a lot of people that use marijuana. Like, I may not partake because I'm a chicken. I will admit I'm terrified that I'm going to be allergic to it and not be able to explain at the hospital what's going on because I'm high. So I'm not doing that. Not taking a chance. No.
You see,
what's going on? I can't tell you.
Look, I was in that exact situation with mushrooms once, and that's as much of that story as I'm willing to tell.
I'm not doing that because sometimes when I'm allergic to things, my body tries to end itself. So no. Yeah. But I don't judge anybody else for it. Like, that's not my business. You do what you're gonna do, right? And most of them will smoke a joint now and then, and everything else about them is perfectly normal. I've met one person who was bipolar, who, when she would smoke a joint about once a week, wasn't bipolar. I don't know what the chemical thing in regard to brain chemistry versus THC and all that was with her, but it worked. So, in my opinion, it was a good thing. right? But the stereotype is still there. Do we all believe that all people who smoke pot are like Cheech and Chong? I don't think so. Like, I
don't think
Tuesday
so.
I voted to legalize recreational marijuana, so...
But
I
all of this is a drop in the ocean compared to all the rap music that we've heard. I mean, I love Cypress Hill more than any other gangster rap band, if they can even be called a gangster rap thing. But and that's the tip of the iceberg, as I say, with regard to how much music glorifies marijuana use. And I'm fine with that, because maybe that was part of what eventually got the American government to say, okay, sorry, we illegalized weed and told all of you other countries to illegalize weed, but we're going to stop doing it now. And I'm just sat here confused, thinking, why my vassal state country is still illegalizing weed.
Yeah, honestly, the people that I'm sorry to for the fact that this happened, that we had weed outlawed for so long in the U.S. before we started talking about legalizing it and everything, are the people that spent years or decades in jail for selling it.
Yeah.
Or just possessing it.
Yeah, or just possessing it.
There's that, and then there's the cancer patients whose their lives have been, completely transformed by it. And, I think that's, we have this stigma because Connecticut they legalized recreational marijuana, right? So it's a whole new world out here, right?
Yep.
I literally smoked a blunt while I'm walking past a police car, and I was freaked out, but at the same time, I'm like, wait a minute, this is okay? And yes, it was. Now, on the walk, we passed a family that had young children, and it's like, oh, well, listen, I agree that I don't think that anyone should have to be susceptible to something that they don't consent to, right? Whether it be secondhand smoke or sex or whatever, right? Fine. But I think that we have downplayed the health benefits of marijuana. And even in children, it's even beneficial to children. So, listen,
although
smoke
isn't. Smoke
it is
inhalation
edible
isn't.
form.
It is edible form.
Right. In its edible form, it's definitely a different story, right?
Right.
But that's, all that aside, like the point I'm making here is that stereotypes don't necessarily control people's way of thinking.
Right.
And this is like old news to Gen Xers. It's very frustrating to see Gen Y and the Zoomers trying to bring this all back and hash this all out all over again. Mm-hmm. We had TV shows growing up that busted that crap wide open, where we looked at stereotypes in some of them, and we looked at real life types of circumstances in some of them, and these issues were treated as something to break open and pick at and examine, maybe laugh at aspects of them, maybe cry about aspects of them, and then draw our own conclusions on and decide how we were going to live, And I mean, if you go back to, this would have been more after we were, college age and older, a lot of it. But Urkel, there's all these stereotypes that you hear. Oh yeah, people stereotype black men as big and strong and great athletes and not very bright and all this stuff. Well, where the hell did Urkel come from? Mm-hmm. Right? What was the point of that show? And it was formulaic and funny, and it was the old vaudeville formula of people getting themselves into ridiculous situations and then having ridiculous antics trying to get out of those ridiculous situations. But it also hit deep issues. It also hit the stereotypes. It hit the way that people look at each other. It hit prejudices. It hit human behavior, and it would yank on your heartstrings too.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't something that came about last week, right? That was something that came about years and years ago.
Yeah.
And so we've gone way backwards on this. So all this crap he says about male dominance and sexist stereotyping and who's control, ownership and so on. In my opinion, none of that crap is relevant. It doesn't matter if there are stereotypes portrayed. It doesn't matter if there are things that you don't like portrayed. And it doesn't even matter who owns the media companies, the conglomerates, the small media companies, whatever. What matters is what you personally take from it, and how you and your circle of acquaintances, friends and acquaintances, order your lives and respond to it. When you look at things and say, well, that's realistic, that's unrealistic, and so on. Are you imitating somebody that you saw in a television program that is intended to just entertain people? Or are you acting on your own personal matrix, I guess, your own personal net pattern of beliefs and values and interests? Like, I guess he thinks women are too dumb to do that. But he goes on to say, anti-feminist commentators often claim that we live in a misandric or man-hating culture in which the media is dominated by anti-male content. This is false. Looking at media content, it is simply false to claim that there are uniformly negative representations of men. Instead, there are far more representations of men than women. Now, one thing I'm gonna hit before we go there, because there's 3 bullet points here. Then he goes, men are depicted in a wider range of behavior than women, and there are at least as many men who play heroes as villains. So I'm gonna say he doesn't get it, first of all.
At all.
Right? The uniformly negative thing, that's a straw man.
Mm-hmm.
The misandric thing, that's a straw man. We say we live in a gynocentric culture that prioritizes women. Misandry exists, and there's a lot of things that are misandric. But we have not claimed that culture is man-hating. We have claimed that culture ignores men, that culture dismisses men because women are more important in the eyes of our culture. And that is true. And I will also point out some of the things that he's claimed are not mutually exclusive. Uniformly negative representations of men are not mutually exclusive with far more representations of men than women, for instance.
Right. It just because there might be more men represented than women, but in no way are we negatively representing those men at all. Not those husbands that can't figure out how to wash the clothes, and the woman has to come in and say, here, it's just, you need the magic of blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
Are you kidding me? And it's simple as that, but it goes so much deeper. I mean, the media is openly hostile towards men. I don't think there's a show that we have watched so far that doesn't in some way play against this or play up to this, right? It's always the man is bad. The woman has to come in and save him. Forget about it.
What kind of representation would you say Homer Simpson represents when it comes to men?
That is exactly who I'm thinking of. You know what I mean? He's the stupid husband. His only purpose there is to go to work and maintain the fucking household. That's it. And not maintain the household as in keeping it clean. It's just he's paying for everything. Somehow, I don't know.
And his face is the total opposite of blackface.
Yeah.
Or it's analogous to blackface. This is something Alison pointed out like fucking 10 years ago, and nobody picked up on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's all hidden behind the yellow,
Mm-hmm.
but you can do with white men what blackface did with black men. all that time ago, and it's fine when you do it to wipe men out because of this idea of if you just flip the script, you don't have to just not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to flip the script and make it the other kind of racist, and you have no exit plan ever. So we keep doing this forever, and until a different thing becomes the dominant race, and then we do the same thing with that until that race becomes less dominant, and then you do the same thing with whichever third generation of race is the most dominant, and you keep going. It's the same kind of purity spiral that has been experienced by many I guess ideologies that we're not even allowed to name on YouTube, lest we get demonetized.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
There's another thing too. Yeah, I could go on and on about like, well, how do Beavis and Butthead represent males? How does Al Bundy represent males? Blah blah blah. But let's look at one other thing. How are the motivations of good guy versus bad guy men portrayed, versus the motivations of women in the types of characters that you see in entertainment media? You look at the men who are portrayed as heroes. Their motivations aren't usually themselves. Their motivations aren't usually, I'm gonna overcome my limits. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to top everybody else. Once in a while you'll see that
I'm avenging my
right.
the love of my life and my children.
I'm gonna rescue my daughter, right? You killed my fucking dog,
Yeah.
like. But you don't get, unless it is a story of athletic success, and even then, when it's true to life, the motivation is still for my wife at home, for my family, for my neighborhood. It's not just I'm doing this because I want. It's I can show them that people of my demographic can do this. Right?
And it's never for the sake of men. The protagonist of a story never does anything for the deus vult of men.
Right.
For the pride of the male. It's always either because of their family, their woman and their children, or it's because of their tribe, or it's because of their city, or it's because of their country, or even further than that. Let's hope it doesn't go as far as my globe, because men will do anything for anything they're told is important, and arguably what's important is their family, and possibly their country. Now, those of us in the sensible center will say the only thing that's important is that which lies between the family and the country. Beyond that, it's sort of, we're rubbing up against those who are like, no, fuck the family, fuck the country, we need the globe.
Yeah.
And perhaps whatever lies below that.
Right.
People who don't even give a shit about the tribe. People who only give a shit about their individual selves. And that's an important point to make as well. Yes, there is an individualistic equivalent of something that's just as degenerate as the globalists. And yeah, you can see those are both cringy terms to say, but that's because they're so absurd. But we need to bear both of these things in mind. It's possible to become too collectivist. That's all over the place, yes, but it's also possible to become too individualist. And that's less of a problem, but ironically, you can see how the two cross over. That it's not as if hyper-individualism is disconnected from hyper-collectivism. One can be used as a siphon towards the other. And that's I could talk about that for hours if I could script everything I need to say right now. But sorry, we were talking about Michael Flood, and we're trying to get into our third sentence.
So well, honestly, no, we're about
really try.
We're a little bit into the page, actually. We've gone a few paragraphs here, but the interesting thing about his going on about representations of men and women here is I don't think he's said anything about this. He talks about how much money they make here, and stuff. But what we just talked about with regard to male characters, and at the other end of it is the bad guy male character wants to control people. He wants to be famous. He wants to be rich. Sometimes he wants all of those three things, right? Or he wants to control a particular woman, or somebody made him mad because they picked on him personally because his life was rough, and now he wants to just hurt everybody because he's been hurt so much, right? Those are the bad guy men. Those are the motivations for being the villain. But women, those motivations can be the motivations of a protagonist woman. Gone Girl was a feminist anthem, and the protagonist was a sociopath. Gone Girl was a woman who took a false allegation as far as she could and then used it to trap her husband in a loveless relationship where he knew she might do that to him again at any time.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I've never seen the movie.
Oh, my God. She goes on a whole, she takes off. She actually got urine from a pregnant woman to make it look like she was pregnant and then disappeared. She made it look like he killed her. She created a fake crime scene and everything. And then disappeared. And she exploited an ex-boyfriend who was completely and totally snowed under, a complete simp for her, and then eventually killed him, went back to her husband, and in the story, because she's a woman claiming to have been kidnapped and defended herself against, this ex, they won't question her story. They won't dig into it. It's a feminist anthem. I don't know if it was written for feminists or by feminists, but the chill girl narrative comes from that story. And that's a feminist protagonist right there. And that's a woman protagonist. There are women in movies who are portrayed as the hero of the movie, the protagonist for a movie, because they learn to put themselves first before everybody else. Apparently we're supposed to believe they should. That's, that's the end conclusion. Now, there are also women who are portrayed the way men are portrayed. And it's not necessarily, the fame goal can be in there, the wanting money goal can be in there, but the motivation where they care about the kids in their neighborhood and they want to do something to improve their circumstances, or they have a family that they need to get out of circumstances that are causing the kids to grow up with bad lessons and stuff, things like that. Those exist, and I love stories like that. But it's women can be portrayed as heroes based on the things that make men villains in movies, right? And women portrayed as villains are usually trying to hurt other women and their children or their husbands or their communities or whatever. Now a counterexample, like the women that get portrayed like men. There was a movie I saw ages ago. I remember getting to sit and watch this movie because I was injured. The title was Honey, I think. And the main character was, why can I not think of anybody's fucking name today? She's a really pretty girl, and she's, and she's been in a lot of things, and I should be able to remember her name, but I can't off the top of my head. The first thing I saw her was in a TV show where she supposedly had cat DNA. It was really unscientific, but it was entertaining. And I can't think of her name. It's really stupid. But the movie Honey, her motivation, a big part of her motivation was the kids in her neighborhood.
Jessica something.
Yeah, Jessica Alba.
Jessica Alba, yes.
The thing I liked about that movie was her use of dance as a way to help kids rehabilitate themselves that had gotten into bad circumstances and gotten themselves into trouble and everything. That was cool. And her wanting to be famous isn't necessarily bad. It's not my gig, but it's not bad. Dark Angel, yeah, there we go. So people know who I'm talking about. But yeah, women can be portrayed that way, and it makes a good film, right? I love those types of stories, especially when there are successes. The bad guy in that movie, the villain in that movie, was portrayed as a guy whose main motive was to sexually harass her, right? So there's the stereotype. That is the one thing that kind of cheesed me off about the movie. It was like, can't they have a bad guy that, they could have had the bad guy. There were also villains that wanted to force the kids into gangs. That was a little more realistic in my opinion. But yeah, the bad guy always has to be like a pervert or some sort of sexist this or that in female anthems, right? You can't have even a good female anthem without that. But it can be done, and it's sad that feminists object to men having a wider range of behavior in their depictions, when in reality, when you look at how the characters are portrayed and their motives are portrayed and their personalities, their characteristics are portrayed, what's heroic in men versus what's heroic in women? If you really want something feminists should be complaining about, it's the fact that women are encouraged to view themselves as heroes for being selfish. So he goes on, there are at least as many men who play heroes as villains, which wasn't really a point that does anything to counter what we've talked about.
No. And if we want to talk about characters playing heroes, how many times do we see women playing these hero roles that are unjustified? They're the Mary Sues, right?
Yeah.
They're just, I don't know how I got here, but I just got all these superpowers and now I'm going to save the world. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, you have to take a balanced look at this shit. It's just, but he can't do that. There's a penis on the screen, so that means that men are dominating.
Well, the other thing is, let's take a look at superheroes, right? If a guy is a superhero, it is okay, socially, for the writer to explore what an arrogant asshole his powers have contributed to him becoming, right? He knows what he can do, he knows what he can get out of it, and he knows that he is far above other people in certain ways, and he gets full of himself. He stops recognizing other people's autonomy around him, or he starts using violence where non-violent solutions would suffice, and then he gets criticized for it by his team members, or he gets portrayed as going through a crisis of identity and conscience because of his impact on the world around him. And he learns important lessons, like with great power comes great responsibility, right? He learns important lessons like you can't be an asshole and have people still trust you. If you destroy a shitload of property, it affects the people that you just saved, all of that with female characters, female heroes, female superheroes are allowed to be jerks, and nobody's allowed to say anything about it because they're getting their own back from the patriarchy.
Right. And what was that movie where God, I'm so bad at this, but the one where she tried to steal the motorcycle from the guy, but she's supposed to be a
Oh
superhero.
yeah. Shit, I can't think of her name. This is one like I have not watched very many of the more recent Marvel movies because I've gotten annoyed with the portrayal of the female heroes. But that's one
Yeah.
of the examples. Like that one went around, and I saw enough descriptions of the scene that I had to go find it. And Captain Marvel, thank you, Xeranx.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, she was an asshole, right? And in anime, this happens a lot too. Like the male characters have to be honorable. The male characters have to be kind, patient. The heroes have to tolerate being victims of violence, and if they don't, they have to go through, like I said, that crisis of conscience and that crisis of identity and stuff.
Right.
Whereas it's a lot more rare, even in anime. There are female characters that go through that in anime as opposed to Western media, but it's still a lot more rare. And they do still have a lot more leeway to be assholes. Right? And sometimes it's more comedic, like when they're assholes to the guys, than the other way around. Now, there's some anime that'll go both ways with that. Ranma 1/2 or 1/2 or whatever you call it does that. I never understood how to read that properly. But for people unfamiliar with that one, if you know Inuyasha, it was by the same creator, and it's funny. But it's a gender bender cartoon. But for the most part, when you look at Western media, you're not allowed to criticize women for being assholes very much. Right? And that's changed too. So I remember growing up watching television shows and movies and stuff where women had crises of conscience and identity over being an asshole because they had some degree of power and figuring out that, hey, that's not okay. And but it's not allowed anymore. And that's a result. That's a direct result of the feminist push against criticism. You can't criticize women.
No.
So,
At all.
He goes on. Thus, there is a diversity of positive and negative roles, especially for white men. So, of course, he has to get skin color in there. No diversity of positive and negative roles for black men, right? All black men are portrayed as drug dealers
Doctors and lawyers. Yeah.
Drug dealers and bums or something, right? There's no movies about great black athletes that overcame difficult upbringing, and certainly not about any great black influencers of society.
No.
Or anything.
No. Malcolm X didn't exist.
No movies about those guys at all. They don't exist.
Yeah, that's not media. Maybe I don't know. I know this because he's making all of these claims, yet he has nothing cited to back up the things that he's saying. So he's just bloviating. It's just, this is what I feel, and these are my facts. I claim these are facts. And here's why you're wrong.
Now, he did cite Anderson about the being as many men who play heroes as villains.
That's okay. I don't know if that's a link listed down below. I don't see.
I'm thinking it's supposed to be like go down to reference number 75. Okay. I don't see 75 references here with numbers. I don't see that many numbered references. Look, I'll have to go back down and go back through this and look for the references, but he does occasionally have a reference. I don't think the reference is for all the bullet points, but it might be. But I think the Anderson that he is referencing is the Anderson that came and spoke at ICMI. I want to say he was 2018. It might have been 2016, but ICMI London. One of the two ICMIs in London. And I don't know if he would agree with Flood's portrayal of his writing as a debunking of men's rights complaints.
Yeah.
Just based on the way that he engaged with people at the event, I don't think he was anti-MRA at all. But, yeah, anti-feminist commentators claim that women are taking over the major institutions of society, including mass media. Taking over. Yes, totally. They're just flooding in there with their high-heeled shoes and their Madonna bras and walking in like they own the place.
Like Nikki Haley with her 3-inch heels.
Right? Totally. That's the claim. The claim has no bearing on feminist influence.
No.
Right? And on no, the whole ESG and DEI thing, we aren't talking about that at all. It's all about women taking these institutions over. That's the claim. The reality is that that's another giant straw man. But he goes on to claim that it continues to show male dominance and sexist stereotyping. And his list: major male characters in top-grossing films outnumber female characters 73% to 27%.
Oh no! Oh no! I wonder where we might also see reflections of this in our entertainment arenas. Anybody checking in with soccer these days? The WNBA?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not a sexist thing. Listen. If a woman does a good job, right? If she can bring people to the box office and sell movie tickets, then fine. It doesn't mean that it's a sexist thing if perhaps another movie comes out and the male is the starring role, and maybe the writing is better, maybe the directing is better, maybe they spent way much more on the budget to make it look more appealing on film, right? Maybe the story's more captivating.
Yeah.
None of that is even taken into account here. It's just, well, more people went to see the men than went to see the women, so obviously it's just, we're just sexist against the women's.
So I got a conundrum for him. I want him to watch The Never-Ending Story, the original. Okay.
I love that movie.
Tell me whether he thinks the Empress is a major character in the film.
Right.
Because I think she was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the hero Atreyu goes on this quest, this coming of age quest for the Empress. Right?
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna die if he doesn't.
Yep.
Doesn't that make her a major character? Her
No.
importance. Without
No,
her,
no.
there'd be no film.
What that does is show how dominant the male has to be, because he has to be the savior. He's got to be the one to do all the action that saves the woman. So he's really the main figure here. It's not about her wants or needs.
Yeah, not at all. No, his motivation totally got lost in the swamps of sadness, right? Just, it really is difficult for me to not laugh at feminists when they pull this shit. So let's look at what we were talking about before with regard to male characters' motivations and female characters' motivations. Right? There's a type of speech, a type of sentence structure in the English language that uses a phenomenon called "you," and in parentheses, "understood." If I say, "Open the pod bay doors, Hal," right? But I leave off Hal, right? Open the pod bay doors. And I'm speaking to Hal, and Hal knows it. That's "you understood."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we are shown at the beginning or in the backstory of a heroic male character that his motivation is to benefit or rescue or honor, you know, which are three big major ones, a female character whose value to him is portrayed in even briefly in the film by showing the female character who she was to him, what happened to her, or why that motivation relates to this quest, this thing that's going on with him. That's similar to that you understood. That doesn't leave the viewer. The viewer doesn't suddenly forget throughout the entire rest of the movie that portrayal of the importance of the daughter that needs rescued, the inspiring wife or girlfriend whose honor or love or personality inspired this guy's whole life philosophy, or mother, or adoptive mother, Vash the Stampede. Right, his whole life philosophy comes out of the way that she was. I'm going to be the person that she would have wanted me to be. All of that is representation of women. And it's not a godlike representation of women. It's a representation of the relationship between men and women, and how a man makes himself the best person that he can be as a way of showing his love. It's something that I've always said women could learn from. When we do that, we are as successful as men in our endeavors. When we don't do that, we end up sitting around whining about how everything is male-dominated. So I don't buy the whole 73% to 27%, because it's a lot like the way feminists treat female power. Well, influence doesn't exist. It's not power when they're talking about power.
Right.
I don't know if that... I hope that... I hope that I'm explaining that right. I hope people are understanding what I'm putting down here, because I'm sure there's going to be feminists out there going, so you're saying that a woman can be the dominant character in the film after only a 30-second scene? Like, no. I'm saying that the woman is not dominated by the man's screen time, when she's the reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes, men make up 55% of regular characters in primetime TV.
Again, he's just looking at numbers, and he's not actually focused on the actual treatment or the portrayal of those men. I would say that it... Go ahead.
There are things that people want to watch men doing that they don't get excited watching women doing.
Right.
Just, so there's the portrayal, and there's also the doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I derailed you there or not, but...
No, I'm just sorry. Allergies, whatever this cold is just affecting me now. So
I understand that. I'm going through the same thing. It's that time of year, and the weather has been like, oh, it's going to be super cold. Oh, it's going to be super warm. Oh, it's going to be super cold. Oh, it's going to be super warm. Oh, it's moldy. How did that happen? Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
right.
We watch men exert themselves in ways that women... I don't know. It's interesting when women do it. Not as many women are expected to do it. It's not portrayed the same way when women do it. We don't watch women we don't want to watch women tearing themselves up. Right? Nobody would want to watch a group of women in battle defending in a losing battle, ultimately. Defending a small piece of land, where their ultimate win is that they delayed another military group, and then they all die honorably and grossly and that kind of thing. Nobody would want to watch that, because their hearts would break. I know you'd like to see it. I'd watch it, but the thing is that most people would be looking for somebody to sympathize with. They'd be looking for something to come along and change the situation so the women didn't all die.
Right.
They'd be looking for somebody to rescue the women, or they'd be looking for, how is it misogynistic that these women are dying?
Exactly. They shouldn't have had to die.
Right. When you have a portrayal like that, it's of men. And of course, historical portrayals of war and things like that, those are going to be of men.
Right.
So part of this, I'm wondering, men make up 55% of the regular characters in primetime TV. Does that include comparing TV shows about things that are male issues, like war, for the most part, is a male issue, right? And comparing those to TV shows that have a lot of female characters, or and also have male characters where it's just an everyday life thing. Because I suspect that if you take out that portrayal of things that you would only expect to see men doing, and you just compare shows where the roles are filled by both sexes, because they're things that you would expect both sexes to be doing.
Right.
And you make that comparison again. You're not comparing apples to oranges. You probably would find even closer to 50-50. 55% is not that bad, right?
No, absolutely not. And again, there's so much more to say about this whole thing. Primetime TV. So does everybody know how the Nielsen ratings are collected? They just randomly send out these, well, not randomly, I think they select a few or whatever, and that used to be the standard for how they chose what they showed and at what slot, right? Mm-hmm. Because television used to be the thing. It used to be appointment viewing. Everybody would come home and they would eat dinner sitting around the television, especially if something major happened, That's not the case these days. People don't come home and turn on the television. People come home and they get on the internet. So this whole primetime TV thing, I'm going to need a little bit more clarification as to what exactly you're talking about here, Michael, because who are you talking about, number one? Number two, what are you considering primetime TV? Are you only talking about people who are sitting their ass on the couch and pressing the buttons on the remote and watching channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9? It just doesn't hold any weight for me.
I suspect he's talking about the boomers who don't come home and go to the internet because
they're already home.
Yeah,
they come home and they switch on the TV. Mm-hmm. To a boomer, the television is like the church.
Yeah.
You if someone's been going to church every Sunday for 50 years, you can't get through to them, and you probably don't need to, because it's probably not a problem. But in any case, if they've been going to the same place every Sunday for 50 years, even if you're a member of their family, you're not going to be able to get through to them because they've been conditioned with those things. Compare that with boomers who have been coming home from work and listening to the television, not just every Sunday, but every day for 50 years. I mean, think of how difficult it is to undo a Christian from their Christian teachings. That it's roughly 7 times as difficult to deprogram a boomer from what they've been programmed to believe by the television that they've been listening to every day for God knows how many hours every day for 50 years.
50 years, at least.
So you kind of can't.
One of the biggest television scandals of the boomer era, in the United States at least, was finding out game shows were fake.
Mm.
Seriously.
Everything on TV is fake. Everything. Even that thing you think isn't fake, no, that's fake too. All of it's fake.
Imagine watching TV with this guy, okay? It's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm not even, it's literally all fake.
Well, it's like watching movies with a literary purist.
Yes.
It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that in the book. That's not right. You know, I'm guilty. I will admit that right now. But yeah, boomers had a totally different outlook with regards to what you see on TV. Also, they had to be reminded at 10 o'clock at night to wonder where their children were. I don't know what the hell was about that. I suppose my parents needed that just because I would sneak out of bed and hide behind my mom's chair and watch TV. That's why I have nightmares about this one scene from Barbarella where she was going to be eaten by weird robot dolls. And to this day, I hate those porcelain doll-faced dolls. Like, those things are evil. I know, and even though it's bullshit, even though I know it's bullshit, right? Somewhere inside me, in my uncanny valley, I know for a fact that the minute I turn my back on one of those things, it's going to try to eat me. But yeah, boomers and television, that's probably part of this. I think part of it, too, is television's been dumbed down so much.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how many other parents did this, but with my kids, we didn't really watch TV.
Yeah.
As soon as it became a thing where you could use, S-video or some other means of using your television as a monitor for a computer that was online, and just show it. And I mean, you could always use your television as a monitor. We used it for the Commodore 64 when I was a kid. But where you could play YouTube through your television, we were watching, stuff that we picked out on YouTube. My my son used to watch Syriac before school. He liked that. He liked a bunch of different stuff. There was actually
crazy animator who did the things with the sheep.
Yeah, he liked that. Yeah. They had a variety of stuff. Like, we found The Tick on YouTube. We found Muppets videos on YouTube from when I was a kid. There was another kid close to his age that did a show on his channel, and it was called Stupid News in the Morning, and it was just him playing with his toys and being a little boy. And my son watched that. It was fun, and it didn't teach him stupid things about people that were not true, and it was just entertaining. And I think that was probably one of the best things that we could have done in regards to, all right, you're going to watch something for entertainment. Let's find things that are actually entertaining instead of relying on what gets piped into our house on the boob tube. But, of course, the complaint that men make up 55% of the regular characters in primetime TV is more important. Primetime TV. So did your moms grow up watch soap operas when you were kids?
Oh God, yes.
My mom did when she was nursing, and there's a soap opera theme song that I can't hear to this day without getting sleepy.
Oh my God, I have fond memories of being home from school with my mom and being sick or whatever, and she'd sit me down in front of the TV and she'd be watching General Hospital, All My Children.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the third one was, but then that would be right before Wheel of Fortune, and then Jeopardy used to come on, and that was the day. It was, oh my God,
game shows. Oh my gosh, yeah. The Price is Right was an ad.
Yes.
It was the whole show was an ad.
It was an ad for an ad for an ad for an ad for an ad.
And they watched it for entertainment. It was like a 30-minute long commercial or an hour-long commercial. that watched it for entertainment. But there's a movie about Geritol had sponsored. Geritol is Centrum Silver back in the day. I don't know if it still exists or not, but it was the old people vitamins. But they advertised on a game show. I want to say like it was called 20 Questions or the $64,000 question or some such thing. There was a movie about the scandal of the longtime winner of the show being given the answers. And that really happened. I don't know how realistic the portrayal was.
You're talking about for Wheel of Fortune, right? No, not Wheel of Fortune.
No, it wasn't Wheel of Fortune.
Right. The Price is Right.
Well, we talked about. I mentioned The Price is Right as being an ad, but the whole game show 20 Questions or the 60. It was at 21, the Assassin of the Grey. So a game show called 21.
Okay.
Had Geritol as its main sponsor. So they would do the game show, and they would mention Geritol. There would be Geritol commercials, and so on. And I think the Wheel of Fortune did the same thing with sponsors. There were a few other game shows where in between things happening on the game show, they would mention their sponsor, and then you would see an ad for their sponsor. And you didn't see commercials for like 6 different businesses necessarily. And that would have been clear back, I think, when my parents were kids. Because my grandparents were all into some certain game shows too. They were big on Jeopardy. They liked that one. Because that's the kind of thing that their age group would have sat around doing. It was like playing Trivial Pursuit, you know. But that scandal really rocked all of the different game shows because it suddenly became understood that this is done in a studio, and it's very possible that what we're seeing isn't like there's things happening that we're not seeing, that the thing that we are seeing isn't real. This guy isn't winning because he's smarter than everybody else. He's winning because they're feeding him the answers. You know, so it really kind of hit them hard. But then they didn't figure out that if they can do that with game shows, they can do it with news media. They can do it with anything.
Yeah.
You know, that took until Generation X. And we didn't figure it out until we were in our 30s. It's pretty sad. So, for instance, a lot of my friends and compatriots, my classmates, went in for Desert Storm and then re-enlisted when they were middle-aged for what positions they could fill when Desert Shield came about. So... But yeah, totally, it's all about how media influences women. And then he goes on, men are more likely to be in their 30s and 40s, while women are more likely to be in the age range 20 to 30. And women virtually disappear at older ages, like in their 50s and 60s. He obviously never watched The Golden Girls. Older male characters on TV and film, but not older female characters, have more power. Again, I don't know where he's getting that, what TV shows he's watching.
Yeah. And, you know, the other thing is like, who is he? How is he getting this information? I mean...
Not from Gunsmoke. I don't know. Yeah, this is bull. And again, he's saying Anderson says this.
It's like just because this may seem to be true, men are shown to be more likely is in their 30s and blah blah blah. What does that mean? And this is the other thing that he doesn't talk about is who's actually consuming this content.
Yeah.
You know, it is more women than men that sit in front of the television and watch this bullshit.
Yep.
Men are typically out at work working, when they come home, they either watch the news or the game or something else. They don't watch this bullshit. They don't entertain themselves this way. They might have to
most
sit
of them are busy.
right. And in the event that they do have to sit through it, it's something that the woman chose. Oh, watch 90 Day Fiancé, honey. Come on.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
And given this division between the old media and the new media, namely the broadcast media and the internet media, people who have the whole day ahead of them, the whole day not having to do labor, will just sit there with the television. It's this. I'm sure some psychologists can fill me in on this, but when you have all the options in the world, you will just cycle through them and not really take anything in. But when you have to spend half of the day working, and then you get the other half of the day to sleep and take in the best possible media you can possibly take, you won't listen to the television. You'll be like, I know what I want. I'm going to look for that thing, and I'm going to go to the internet for that thing. This is something that is so difficult for boomers to understand. Because when you talk about where you get your information, they'll go, well, you can't possibly get any accurate information from the internet. And if you at all challenge them on that, you're like, well, that's an odd thing to say, because the internet is just the telephone but with pictures.
Right.
It's literally just the telephone but with pictures. It's like saying, well, you can't get any accurate information from the telephone. I mean, surely it depends on who you're talking to, doesn't it? And then you go, so if you can't get accurate information from the internet, then where do we get accurate information? Pray tell. And the answer is the revealed preference of the boomer you're talking to is the television.
Right.
The television and the radio and the newspapers. That's where we get accurate information. Not a peer-to-peer communication medium, but a broadcast medium. You don't get to talk to the people talking to you. They just get to talk to you. And this is not just a communication medium, it's a broadcast medium. It can all be regulated by the likes of Ofcom, which is regulated by the government. And I'm only saying that in UK English. I'm sure there's an equivalent in any given country anywhere. The government tells some NGO what to do, and that NGO tells the people what to do. I don't know, NGO means non-government organization. Right. And that's an ironic thing to say.
See, a lot of non-government organizations aren't. They've got their connections. But something else I'll point out here. Like, you look at the first thing and the third thing here. 73% of characters in top-grossing films, or major characters in top-grossing films, are male, and men are more shown to be more likely in their 30s and 40s, while women in their 20s and 30s. So we'll start with the fact that male characters are more disposable. So you have major male characters. If they're going to kill off a major character, it's usually a male, right? Yep. And it's TV shows and movies. I mean, that's not new either. You go back to how many female red shirts were there in Star Trek? The original Star Trek. How many female red shirts? But you also have the issue of a man's age, as his age advances to a degree, he gets taken more seriously. So if he's still in his 20s, he's not going to be taken as seriously as a man in his 30s or 40s or 50s. And it's not until he hits the age where he's really over the hill, an age where a man might start retiring or going into senility or things like that, he's taken less seriously, but most of the time it's, he's wiser and more experienced and so on, because his values involve doing things for other people. Whereas women's values are the same all the way through. It's doing things for themselves, and their looks are more important. How people react to them is more important. And so you get the youthful age being important in a woman. And until experience and dedication to your community become important in female characters, to the degree that women are not taken seriously as much in their 20s as they are in their 30s and 40s, outside of coming of age stories, you're going to see more older men portrayed versus younger women. Right? And as you get to the older women, they're portrayed more as, either the angry old battle axe or the cute little granny that everybody wants to love and protect. Because women don't make fun of themselves, whereas you take old men, the thing about Golden Girls that made it so popular was those women making fun of themselves. It was like Grumpy Old Men, the TV show, but with women, right? Or Grumpy Old Men, which was sort of a unwritten sequel to the Odd Couple, could be said Golden Girls, but with men, right? And you can do that most of the time with men, and plenty of men will be like, yeah, I'll play that role, I want to do that, that's funny. But over the last century, fewer and fewer women have been willing to do that. It used to be common. Now it's rare. So if you want to bitch about old women not being in media, look at women. And if you want to bitch about there being more male characters, look at male disposability. He also, this is going to be the last thing for tonight. He also says, as a media group, our media report documents, women comprise only 28% of characters in family films, 39% of characters on primetime TV, and 31% of those in children's programs. So what those three things all have in common, because a lot of primetime characters are characters in families, is that there are men, there are women, and there are children. So is he talking women and girls, or is he just talking women versus men versus children of both sexes as a group?
Right. Is it women and children versus fathers, or?
Well, that's the thing. If it's just, especially characters in family films, right? Film being about family, most of the characters in the film would be children.
Right.
How many characters in family films are men? Maybe a father is portrayed, or maybe a camp counselor or a school teacher is portrayed as male.
But that's them dominating. They're
Right.
dominating the scene, Hannah. They're dominating the media content. Got to get those fathers out of there.
Apparently.
Jesus.
And in children's programs, those programs are usually, again, almost all the characters are kids, especially if you look at Nickelodeon and Disney. The overwhelming majority of those characters are kids.
Right. And again, what is his... What is he looking at? What is he measuring this by?
Yeah.
I want to know what the examples are so I can look at it and say, oh, okay, all right, well, maybe you have a point there. I mean,
it really is a non-statement, and this is a non sequitur. So women don't dominate these programs. So,
right. What does that mean? How is that a negative impact on society? Or are you just trying to say that to say, oh my God, it's not true that what does he say? That men control the media.
Yeah.
It's media's male dominant.
I kind of feel like I would feel about these arguments. I kind of feel the same way that I would feel if I was sitting on a bus, driving somewhere, or riding somewhere on a bus, and one of the passengers on the bus shot a guy in the leg or something, and he's just shocked as shit that he's been shot, right? And he looks at the passenger, he's like, "You shot me!" And in comes Michael Flood. Well, there's a man driving this bus.
Yeah.
And Hannah's the only woman here. Yes, but this guy's been shot. Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about... Well, no, that's not what you're talking about, dude. We're talking about portrayals of male disposability, portrayals of what it takes for a man to be taken seriously versus a woman, portrayals about... how the differences in portrayals demonstrate society's attitudes toward people, what you can and can't make jokes about, right? You could sit there and make fun of that guy. Oh, of course, you would get shot. You would shoot this guy in the leg, and you would miss every major artery. What the hell is wrong with you?
I mean, can't you see how a man getting shot by another man is somehow oppressive towards women and also hilarious at the same time?
Yep. And he better quit whining because there's only one woman on this bus. How can you not notice? I can't even have a conversation with another woman on that bus and have it not be about men because there's no woman to talk to. Obviously. Like this comes across exactly that way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're bleeding, but there's a man driving this bus. It's his fault. You're not a victim of the gunshot. A man shot you. Like, come on. So, we did get a super chat here. Xeranx gave us $5 and said that's why The Last Man was a doomed show regardless of what they were doing on Netflix. Thankfully, they shit the bed early on sparing everyone's time. I'm not familiar with that show, so...
Does he mean The Last Man Standing?
No, that one, I know that one, but I don't think that was on Netflix. That's on actual television. I've seen ads for it.
Yeah, that's a new Tim Allen show.
Yeah. I've watched a couple of episodes because there is cable at work. And sometimes I need something to help me tell what time it is without having to go looking for the clock. And I can hear what changes. And then... since Tucker Carlson's not on Fox News anymore, I don't really want to watch Fox News anymore. And it's messed up now because I can't tell what time it is by who's on. But for a while, there was a station playing Last Man Standing at a particular time of the morning. And I knew if that came on, that I only had so much time before I had to start fixing a breakfast,
Yeah.
But yeah, that I don't think that's the show that he's talking about. But apparently it shit the bed at some point. Xeranx gave us a $5 super chow and said, "Hello, the dogs are feasting." This was clear back at the beginning. "In lieu of foul necromancy and making it not so, Jezebel is no more. Rejoice!"
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. It took a while. It took long enough. I've noticed.
The wicked bitches are dead. Well, it's not,
Yeah. The reason that this is something to celebrate is not because they're not getting their say. Like, they could keep publishing all they want. But it's not profitable because obviously women are fed up with their shit. Right? Mm-hmm. Advertisers are fed up with their shit. If nobody's reading it, or not enough people are reading it, and not enough people are advertising on it because of that, that's a good thing. Because they're writing with shit. But I've noticed that's happening. Like, we used to, for after shows, we used to pick from things like Feministing and Feminist.com and a few other websites they would have these dumbass feminist articles about, the emotional labor of being the one who takes care of all the Christmas cards. Mm-hmm. Every year. That was one that we did.
I remember that article.
Yeah. And I'm like, I have never sent out a Christmas card list
in my life.
I don't know.
In my life.
No. that's just not the way we do things. I think Gen X kind of killed that whole tradition for the most part. I don't get Christmas cards from my friends. I get a few from boomers in my family.
I get them from my dentist and from my fucking veterinarian.
Yeah, I get them from politicians that knew my parents.
Yeah.
But and I get one from work every year, and it's always real nice because it's an organization for which Christmas is important. But I mean, like we do a whole show on that, right? On the article and the whininess, and we'd laugh about it, or articles about how I cheated on my husband and it made me a better wife. Like, no, it didn't. It makes you a fucking disloyal bitch. Shut the fuck up, right? And we'd laugh at those, or we'd do like outrage fuel and stuff. A lot of them are gone. I'm having to search high and low to find feminist content to make fun of because it's disappearing from the web because people don't want to read it. People don't want to watch it. So, and in fact, I was so desperate that last week I looked at something. I'm like, this could be real or it could be a Poe. It turns out it was a Poe. The site was a parody, but it was using real Cosmo articles as it was reacting to real Cosmo articles. But the reactions were supposed to be a parody of feminist writing, except it was exactly the same thing feminists really say. It's very hard to parody them. So, yeah, I'm not surprised Jezebel vanished. And I'm glad that kind of content is becoming unpopular enough that nobody cares about it anymore. Nobody wants to read it anymore. Well, but it does kind of make my job a little harder.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's just being repackaged, and it's gonna, there's gonna be another source, right? We just haven't really. I mean, and
well, I'm gonna have to start trolling the feminist subreddits for it. Like I'm just gonna have to. There's a type of cleaning that you can do in a body of water where you scrape the shit out of the bottom of it, called dredging. That's what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to dredge the feminist websites or feminist subreddits for links to bullshit.
Yeah.
Pity me. I'm a victim. Of feminist bullshit.
I mean, it just seems to be coming out of the woodworks these days, even from people who, we maybe thought was on our side of things. And I'm speaking directly to Sydney Watson. Because now all of a sudden it's just the script has flipped with this one. And now it's all the red pill content is garbage, and it's just as divisive as the feminist movement. And it's just another no account, no research done, just basic bitch level of understanding of the topics that would make someone say that we're just like feminists. And
it makes me sad, honestly. That one in particular makes me sad. I will say that. And it's not something that I say lightly. I had hope because she was doing real world stuff.
Yeah.
And then so being a woman in the men's rights movement means understanding the difference between a generalization and an absolute statement that targets you.
Exactly.
So when guys say, women are not as loyal as men, women are not as strong as men, women don't have the endurance of men, when women don't tolerate dangerous or dirty conditions as well as men, we don't have to shout, #not all women. They know that because we're here. Right? And Karen said it really well in an argument that actually was kind of the way that she and Allison and I got together way back. And we covered this a few years ago in a series of shows about how Honey Badger Radio got started. But what happened was there's a men's rights subreddit, and then there's a lady MRAs subreddit, right? I think the girlfriend of one of the mods of the MRA subreddit started Lady MRAs. I don't know. I never really got involved in that. I was too busy in the men's rights subreddit discussing the issues and knocking down feminist counter-arguments.
You mean you didn't need a special ladies section?
No, I didn't need a women's room in the men's rights community. Right? And in fact, most people didn't know I was female. My my Reddit username, like, I had started out with a feminine Reddit username, and I got shadow banned really quickly. And it was for talking about the 7 Years in Hell case. And it just, like, boom. They treated it as me trying to dox somebody, even though I wasn't giving anybody's information, right? So I made a new account and used a version of the same name, and because it was a version of the same name, got shadow banned again. Made a third account, used a completely different name. Second I talked about that case, boom, shadow banned again. So I ended up in there under. Then for a while I was going to try to do, like, I've talked about having weird nightmares and stuff. So I started writing scary stories based on these weird nightmares. And I was going to do a whole, blogging thing. And so I took the nickname Onero's Grip. And then when I started talking more in men's rights, I thought, I'm going to use this account for it. I'm not going to do the scary stories thing. There is nothing scarier than what's happening to the relationship between the sexes in our world right now. That is going to be the death of humanity.
Yes.
We are in the grip of a nightmare. So I kept Onero's Grip as that. And that's been the username that I've used ever since on Reddit. Well, it's not feminine. It's not masculine. It's just a name, right? Yeah. So when I would argue, and I didn't hashtag not all women this, and but girls also have it bad here, men have it bad, but women have it worse, blah blah blah. When I started, I didn't use the phrase being female is life on easy mode, but I've always felt that way about it, and I've talked that way about it. There's a lot of things that I know I've been sheltered from and was aware of it growing up, because I'm female. Things I didn't have to confront because I'm female. There are things my younger brother felt obligated to protect me from, even though I'm 2 years older than him, because I'm female. Even when we were kids, even when we were elementary school age. He broke a guy's nose, a high schooler's nose, in defense of me one Halloween night when he was 9 years old and I was 11. Because he's a boy and I'm a girl. Because I was his sister. I heard the voice of God come out of my brother that night too. That's my sister! Bam! To be fair, the guy dragged me down the sidewalk by my bag of Halloween candy. So Adam was pretty mad. He was not a happy camper. I've done the same thing to girls because they've picked on my brother too. So it's not exactly a one-way street there. But none of them were that much bigger and older than me. That was, we're talking actual freshman in high school, and he was, I was in the 5th grade. He was a 3rd grader. My brother was a 3rd grader when he did that. It was basically going back to, the whole, I completely lost track. That just took me, I'm, in the moment now, seeing my brother's face. But going back to all of that, the difference in expectations and all of that, I talked about that on Reddit, and so people assumed I was male, right? So when we get into this argument in the female subreddit, what had happened was there was a guy named Factory on Factory 2, I think, in the men's rights subreddit that participated here and there in the Lady MRAs subreddit. And they asked him a question, and he answered it. And he answered it honestly. And he didn't answer it in a way that catered to women's sense of self-importance. And they hit him with my favorite question to hate. Do you respect women? Like, I have gone on massive tirades about that stupid question. Why do you expect that from a guy? What have you done to earn his respect, right? And he was brutally honest in response to that. And they banned him. And then they came to the men's rights subreddit and they asked us to judge him by their standards. And so we ended up in a slap fight between the men's rights subreddit and the Lady MRAs subreddit. And this would have been like 2012 or 2013. And one of the most sensible statements made in that whole slap fight was Karen pointing out that when she sees generalizations about women, she doesn't read them as a woman. She reads them as a person who experiences other women's behavior. She doesn't identify as woman. She doesn't identify as women or part of women. And it was a great statement. And I think there's a dividing line among women in the men's rights movement between women who can do that and women who don't or can't. And so women who can do that can take even the most caustic statement from the men who have been through hell with women, who have been at the bottom of the social ladder. And when I say the bottom of the social ladder, I don't mean the bottom rung. I mean the 2 levels below that, right? Men who have been run through the family courts, which is a lot like being keel-hauled, but with law and policy instead of barnacles, and water. Those guys sometimes can say things that, if you take them personally, would be really offensive. But they're not talking about you, especially if they're talking to you, and they're retweeting or reposting or clicking like or saying, yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say, in response to things that you've said on social media. And then they say all women are disloyal. They mean all normal women, right? All women who are your everyday woman that they'd run into. They know there are exceptions. And I think sometimes it's a way for them to find out which women in the men's rights movement they can trust. And I don't fault them for that, because when a woman knee-jerks to that, right, that's evidence against the trustworthiness. And that's why it makes me sad in that case, because when you get a woman who will actually go out and organize a protest or an event, and she's going to single out somebody in the movement and say, well, except that guy because he pissed me off. Like, you can't benefit men doing that. You have to be able to recognize that there are some people who have been through so much, or who have witnessed so much, or who have been so disillusioned because of the stark difference between what they were brought up to believe and what they found out is true, that they're going to say caustic things. And you have to be able to recognize they don't mean you unless you tell them otherwise. And then they might. But yeah. But in any case, that's my thoughts on that. It makes me sad, because it's we need as much collaboration as we can get among a broad spectrum of people, including women, who have to be able to recognize that abusing somebody is just as bad when it's a man as it is when it's a woman. That cutting off healthy flesh is just as bad when it's done to a baby boy as when it's done to a little girl. That if you are going to put somebody in jail or subject them to other penalties in a criminal case, you should have the facts to prove that they actually committed the crime. And it shouldn't be different based on whether they're male or female. The punishment shouldn't change because of whether they're male or female. And the perception of rehabilitation shouldn't change depending on whether they're male or female, right? All of that. That's what we have to be focused on. All right, you should be able to step over the statement that might be offensive if you lead with your ego and keep right on walking in your protest. Yep, that's there. That's a casualty of the way society treats men. That's a casualty in the relationship between men and women. And I'm fighting to make that not happen as much. You know. And so I'm not going to fight men who say those things because it's not worth it. It's not important. They're not mad at me. They're not wrong. Right? They're injured. It's like getting offended because somebody has a broken leg. How dare you have a broken leg in my presence? I only like whole, perfectly shaped legs. Get that out of my sight. I won't fight for you. Like, doesn't it make a lot less sense when you put it that way? I mean, am I wrong? So if you're a woman in the movement, or you're hate listening to us, and you think I'm wrong, explain in the comments. That's my admonition. So we also got a Rumble rant, a paid Rumble rant. I'm gonna pronounce this Daramouth or Daramuth. It's got an E at the end, so Daramuth. Daramuth. I know, and now I got that stuck in my head.
Galileo.
Yep. Daramuth, premium Rumble user and supporter. So we have there's little icons for this. So there's I guess a lightning bolt and a whale there. Gave us $10 and said, knowing this won't be a huge drop, but I like supporting you guys where I can. Keep making amazing content. And honestly, every penny is great. It's everything that people give us. We're grateful for every last little bit of it. I remember thinking the same thing when all I could afford at the time that there was an organization that was actually going into Afghanistan and getting people out when America abandoned Afghanistan instead of just ending what we were doing there. And I could only afford to send them $20 at that time. That was literally all I had extra, that I hadn't already spent on bills. And I felt bad because I'm like, that's people's lives. They're getting people out of there that are going to die if they stay, and I only have $20 to send. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, if I didn't send that $20 because I felt that way about it, and everybody else that sent $20 didn't send it because they felt that way about it, they would lose hundreds and thousands. And it's the same thing with us, It's a lot of people share with us in small amounts, and it makes all the difference in the world, and we're very grateful. So, and that's pretty much all I really have to say about that. Thanks again. And thanks to my two co-hosts for digging through this sludge with me. Thanks to everybody who listened to this toxic mess that we're delving into, and we'll listen to this more in the future. And thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
I'm gonna have to go empty my boots from this one.
Oh my God,
week.
yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys for stopping by.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.